So I work with a superstitious girl called Rama. We work at the cinema together. One day I get in. I go right over to her at the box office and see her crying. I say, "What's wrong?" Someone has said or done something, and I'd like to know who. She said, "Can you see that girl at the top of the steps near that screen?" I said, "Yes." Rama said, "A minute ago she tripped up the steps and landed on her knee. When she did, I felt a sharp pain in my right knee. I then saw her face as she picked herself up, and she was a spitting image of me. It then occurred to me that this maybe is my long-lost twin. Or maybe even the future. Either way, I don't want her in here. It's too upsetting." I said, "You've been watching too many films, lady." She said, "I won't concentrate until she's gone." I said, "Calm down." I went over to the girl and said, "Excuse me." She looked up and said, "Yeah?" Now to me that was Rama. I thought, this is just a coincidence, and bent down to her and said, "I know what you are. We're on to you." She looked completely confused as she rubbed her ankle. I said, slowing my words down even more, "You're a mystical sprite. You're meant to be looking after my friend Rama. You're her guardian sprite. You should be watching over her, not watching movies." She looked at me for a long time and then said, "Kwari Omori Yari?" Oh no, it's happening. She's cast a damn spell. Now all of a sudden I'm gonna smell like mushrooms. Damn, this job. I looked back at Rama at the box office and smiled. She looked confused and then beckoned me over. I walked over slowly and said, "Do I smell like mushrooms?" She said, "No, you smell like dog burps." I said, "Phew." I walked back over to the Guardian Sprite and said, "Haha, you missed." She then stood up and said, "Tete head and Dieu." I felt a massive rush and fizz in my lower lips. I thought, no, she's given me magical sunburn. I rushed into the toilets to assess the damage. I said, "Ah!" I look like a plastic red hawk. The sunburn. Two things I could do here: complain or run at lots of lorries. La la la. I went back into the foyer. The Sprite was still there, tucking her jeans into her socks so she looked like a famous footy player. I knew Rama loved seeing footy. This was getting crazy by now. I went back over to Rama. "Right," I said. "Look at me now. Look at my sunburn." Rama at once laughed like something, I don't know, chronic. She shrugged her shoulders and said, "Your head looks like a fist covered in dolmio. Get away from me now. You're starting to jeopardize my promotion." She frowned and then stuck her middle finger up at me. I laughed and said, "Classic up your own stomach, ethereal managerial material." I made it back over to Rama's Sprite and had to be firm now. "You are costing me a friendship. I suggest you leave and practice your witchcraft elsewhere." I licked my middle finger and started clicking it very fast indeed, in front of everyone. "Come on, let's hire." I made a little whistle sound too, to sound like a group of cops. The magic bitch just sat there. She then mocked me by pressing her head cheeks together and screaming. All the other customers started feeling weird. Not because she was screaming, but because they were all acting dismayed and gutted and do me. I heard mutterings of, "Oh, bloody hell, that Amazon order has gone tits up. That table I booked online has had a car crash thingy." All on their phones, checking emails and going, "Oh, God." I smiled a bit and said, "What's this?" She said, "A spell that makes people lose interest in the internet." I said, "Oh, God, God, God." I grabbed the Sprite by the turn-up on her jeans and said, in a growling scream, "Let's get out." She said, "You don't understand. I'm watching the film to protect Rama. It's a film about football tricks. She wants to be the next England #1. If I watch this, I could make it happen." I said, "You are so kind and thoughtful." I then made a tut and ah, like a ah. I continued pulling the Sprite through the cinema by her jeans, through the car park and into a building site. I then cleverly attached her turnip to a hook on a crane that my mate Butters ran. I then signalled to the crane's operator, and the Sprite was taken up about 200 metres into the sky. I nipped over to the operator's cabin and said, "We ain't going to drop her, we're just scaring her." When I said this, a man whose name was Preedy shook his head. Then his whole torso started to shake left and right violently. I just wanted to add this. His torso also flexed and shone. "I will not work for an angry person," he said. "I've done that before and ended up spilling drinks all over my controls." And he ran off, basically. The cabin was empty. The crane was stuck. Ha ha ha. I shouted up to the Sprite, "Don't worry, we'll get you down." I started to climb the crane. 'Twas very cold, 'twas very windy and kinda like scary. Ahem. About 16 metres up, I managed to snag my own turnip on the ladder. I looked down and laughed as I thought me and this damn Sprite are really in this pickle together. Forever? I thought more. What if we don't get found? Me and this twin end up on the pages of a local gazette, frozen solid, and more of a look or two of what the fuck on our swollen heads. This made me laugh more, and then I started to not care anymore. I found myself acting like a baby and began to spit and see how long it would take for the spit to hit the waste ground below. My second piece of spit separated into two globules before dancing around each other in a beautiful spiral. I started to punch the crane in excitement. How had I not observed this perfect thing before? Then suddenly I felt a rush all over. You know what I mean? Whoosh! It dawned on me that maybe this Sprite ain't Rama's protector. She has made me see things a whole lot differently. Like, so differently. Is she my protector? I shook my little freezing head as I thought, crikey, my. This is me starting to wake up. Everything is in flux. Nice one, buddy. I patted my cheeks right now. My attention turned towards the Sprite hanging way up in the sky. I kept going. What the heck? Huh? And where has she gone? The hook once holding her was now swinging in the wind, again in a circular motion. That made me understand everything, all at the same time, without having to think. Cheers. I was abandoned by this Sprite. But that's the point, right? Like me go on a journey? I was freezing. I started to scream. The wind was now biting my skin so much it was like getting killed. To go back down the ladder was too easy, too necessary. Instead I climbed higher and higher until I reached the howling apex of the bright black crane. Tears froze. Burps, farts and screaming were all inaudible up here because the wind was so deafening. Shame dat. I climbed onto a flat surface, crossed my arms and folded my legs. I went, ah! And I imagined having a cup of tea with my old pal, with my little pinky pointing out. But now it looked all black and rusted and damaged because of the minus 60 degrees Celsius wind chill. After about 2 hours, I couldn't feel anything at all. No, actually, all I did feel were my lungs starting to split and crack. Air sacs were tumbling from my little parrot tongue as I tried to talk and breathe. Brrr. I tried to lick my nose warm. It's funny. If you looked in the mirror and suddenly you turned inside out, I bet any money you would be all embarrassed and go, ugh. A little man came running into the building site down below. I could hear him shouting weird sayings. Then it looked like he was whispering into his watch. What? Dat Michael Knight? He entered the controller's cabin and started the crane's motors. Pretty lights went up all around me and I sneezed. But funny because I was laughing at the same time. The top of the crane started to move. It started to behave like a big clock arm. At first turning clockwise, like a friendly clock in my mummy's kitchen, with a picture of a bunch of wheat in the centre, to then be like a clock at work, which is horrible to you and goes very slow. So there's me smiling to begin with, and then I go, ah! By now the crane was spinning so fast I couldn't see any landscape, which had looked crazy cool. Just a blur of the horizon, which then appeared vertical and then started switching on and off. After about 100 seconds, I couldn't see anything at all. I had reached terminal confusion. I could not tell you what was up and down. It went dark and the presence of the crane was now just a concept somewhere, and I could only call this limbo. Huge, dark, shiny shapes filled this void, some clicking as they flew by, some shouting, "A taxi!" A classically heated instrument then started to pour underneath my warmthless thighs. It was as shaken and sounding very mechanical. Then, two cylindrical rubbered objects slipped into my palms. These seemed like handles. I looked down and then saw a speedometer, its needle flicking all over the place. Right. It went from 30 to 90 in a second and then up to 200. I thought I was on a broken toy, but nah. I realise this was a time motorbike. What now? What now? I meet a Sprite, then all of a sudden I'm in a crazy story about being in different times. A little screen popped up by the speedometer and said mission. Then next to that it said give it up for my main man, showing a picture of a guy in a blue tack dish floating on a lake of cola. I punched the screen because I didn't get it. Why is this a main man? The picture of him then had a data tag pop up saying manager and gave him 64% energy in another graphic. Now I was beginning to understand. He's maybe a manager of a place and I have to drive into him on this motorbike to get rid of the remaining energy. Yeah, that felt kinda cool sussing that out. I screamed because I still didn't know where I was or what was happening. Huge shaking black shapes covered in cloth were flying by me still. What was all this? I revved this bike and I knew I had to speed up to maybe get a handle on what was happening here. Little letters started splatting on my lovely bike. I thought, don't ruin my bike, I've just got it. A bunch landed on the windshield and spelt out miserable. What? Who's miserable? I ain't. I ain't never been so fast in my damn life. This is wicked. It then dawned on me that I was probably dead and just living in some jumbled up bunch of stupid random dreams before my brain fully shuts down and decomposes. Yeah.